Hello and welcome to today's A-Team Group webinar on embracing cloud in your firm's regulatory response. My name's Sarah Underwood. I'm an editor here at A-Team Group and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Our expert speakers today are Harpreet Singh, Global Offering Lead on Post-Trade Solutions at Luxoft, Niresh Raja, Managing Director, Head of the Data, RegTech and Digital Advisory Practice at Grant Thornton, and Christina Schack, Head of Data Operations and Strategy at Vontobel Asset Management. I'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a few minutes, but first just some hints and tips for you who are joining our webinar. As you'll see next to your video screen, there's a Slido panel and there's a section there for audience polls, and we'll be running 3 of those today, so I'll let you know when they're coming up, and do please share your opinions there so we can see if we're in the right ballpark about what we're talking about. There's also a panel for questions, so please put your questions for our speakers there. Please put them up as soon as you would like to. We'll take them through the Q&A so that we don't lose the lot at the end if we run out of time. So use those and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much indeed for that. So enough of me and over to our speakers. Harpreet, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your interest here.
Hi, my name is Harpreet Singh and I head post-trade solutions within DXC Luxoft, where I'm responsible for business and tech solutions in the space of regulatory, data, liquidity, and operation resilience. Previous to Luxoft, I used to head regulatory data and business change programs in organizations such as Deutsche Bank and Citigroup, so implementing front-to-back complex programs. I also have worked on the other side where I used to head data and regulatory practices for various consulting organizations. So as you can see, a lot of my background has been on the data and regulatory side. So looking forward to the session today, hearing from my panelists as well as the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Niresh, coming to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Niresh Raja. I lead the Data, RegTech and Digital Advisory Practice at Grant Thornton, and that is working with a number of organizations on helping them both meet their regulatory reporting and regulatory compliance obligations, and also making sure that they're leveraging the benefits of data, both in terms of offense, i.e. revenue generation, and defense. This is a really important topic, and that's why I'm excited to be here today, which is how do you actually make sure, as everybody focuses on cloud development and platform development in the now and the future, how do you put the right regulatory reporting components in and maximize value from doing things once and generate the returns from regulatory reporting? And this is specifically on the back of 2 Dear CEO letters, quick succession from the regulators on regulatory reporting. It really poses the positioning on how important regulatory reporting is, but also how data transformation is to be able to enable that. So really excited to be here today and looking forward to contributing and learning from others today.
Thank you. Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and also hello to everyone in this webinar. As Sarah mentioned, I'm heading the data operations and strategy team here at Bank Vontobel, and I'm also in charge of the data governance and data architecture topics here for the whole bank. I'm working in the finance industry since over 19 years now, always looking after data management, reporting, client reporting, regulatory reporting for various banks and functions. And of course, I think many data topics are driven by regulatory requirements. And so therefore, the topic of regulatory and data is really interesting, and the combination and what we get out of that.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So let's get started. But first, let's run an audience poll question. The question is, to what extent has your organization migrated regulatory reporting to the cloud? So while you answer that, let me come over to Harpreet, if I may, to set the scene and tell us to what extent capital markets participants have embraced cloud in their regulatory response. Harpreet, you're on mute.
Yes, of course, first question had to be on mute.
That's okay, no worries. It happens all the time.
I'll start by quoting some of the stats, 3 in fact, which was from the survey which was done by European Banking Authority, where they asked RegTech providers as well as financial institutions about very similar questions. And around 43% of financial institutions said that they have an element of cloud computing in their REG solution, so less than 50%. In the same survey, on the other side, around 70% of RegTech providers said that they use cloud as part of their solutions. But more interestingly, I think the satisfaction level was significantly higher for any type of cloud solution, whether it was reg reporting, just standard cloud, when compared to on-prem solutions. So to summarize, it seems like that there is around little less than 50% FIs or financial institutions who are embracing cloud, but there's still a scope to grow because there are more RegTech providers. But more importantly, I think people are seeing at least some benefits. There's room to grow both on the embracement and realizing benefits, but it's a positive trend from my perspective.
Okay, that's great. Christina, what would you say there as a practitioner? How do you see the extent of cloud?
Yeah, I think that is also my experience with what Harpreet was saying. So I think the extent for regulatory reporting in the cloud is still small, but the trend is definitely in growing, because I think people now see the benefits and now they gain experience with some use cases, and they will improve and enhance this further. And I think we also have to consider that you don't go to the cloud just because of reg reporting, but you have your IT strategy, which then says you want to go to the cloud. So I think many companies embed the reg reporting movement or migration to the cloud into the whole IT plan or long-term IT strategy, and therefore I think it's coming step by step further that way.
Okay, fine. So we're at the beginning of the journey, and we're going to inform it today, I hope. So first of all, may I see the poll results from that first poll, please? And Harpreet, would you like to comment on this? Is this how would you expect things to look at the moment?
Yes, I think that number of 75%. So there is definitely more growth in last year or so. Mm-hmm. So this is increasing, which is good. And I agree it's a limited extent, because people are still on this journey to adopt the cloud, but they have not either fully migrated or have realized full benefits. So yeah, this looks very much in line with what I would have thought.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for that. And thank you, Harpreet. And coming back to you, Christina, with our next question, which challenges of existing non-cloud regulated reporting systems can be resolved by migrating to cloud? If you need me to say it again, that's fine.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think first of all, we need to understand what are the challenges and what are the requirements for regulatory reporting. I think when we look at the regulatory reporting, especially the regulations that came up the last years, it requires a huge amount of data. So it's really the collection of many different data from different sources, different teams, different departments. We have a lot of reg reporting, which really is a company-wide reporting. So it's not just a particular area of your business, it's really across the whole business where you have to collect the data. And I think this is really the challenge, getting all the data together, finding a platform where you can put all the data together from the different sources. And one point there is also when you get data from different sources, they are not harmonized, right? You have the effort to harmonize the data, to cleanse it, to bring it into the right format so that you really can use it for reporting. So I think that's the current challenges, and currently without having proper platforms and without having proper tools, it's a lot of manual work. So there's still a lot of manual intervention for that. And what we also can see from the latest regulations, it often requires market data from external sources. So ESG is a good example where you have also the collection from the ratings for the sustainability criteria, for example, which you have to get in. So you also have to build interfaces from outside. And I think that's really the advantage with cloud platforms. I think this is exactly the goal and the scope of cloud platforms, allowing you to bring tons of data together, having computing power for bringing the data into the right format so that you can process it and use it better. I think, and also the interfaces with the outside world. So if you have a solution provider or a RegTech provider, which also have a cloud solution, there's a better connectivity of these both. So you can connect cloud to cloud, which also makes the access to data much faster. So instead of building data imports into your bank, you directly access it on the cloud and can use it there. So I think that's the advantages: the better computing power, less transformation, reusage of data. And also, I think what we also see is every year we have new regulations, we have new reporting requirements. So you have the scalability with the cloud that you can enhance it going forward. I think that, I would say, are the big advantages from my side.
Okay, Neeraj, what would you say there in terms of the regulatory challenges we have now and what can be moved into the cloud?
Thanks, Sarah. No, I totally agree in terms of what Christina's saying. I think what's going to happen in the future is we're going to see, and we're already seeing it from the UK regulator, and I think we're seeing it from global regulators as well, but they're expecting more agile and good quality data and integration of data that's going to be there in place for for regulatory reporting purposes, and we're seeing that more and more. And there are 2 or 3 trends I think we're going to see in terms of getting that ready. And one is actually very much focused on making sure that the variety of data sources that need to exist can be brought into the cloud and integrated effectively and efficiently. And in terms of 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that possible, but now it is the only way by which you can bring multiple data sources with the computing power, the volume, and the velocity to be able to be brought together, linked through API and microservices, integrated, evaluated, and assessed before that goes out. Now, the 2 trends I mentioned, one is around open finance, which is obviously coming in place. And open finance, for everybody, it's on the back of open banking, which is about really democratizing the integration of data to be able to provide better products and services. Now, that ability to actually open up the market in investments, mortgages, savings, in addition to current accounts and payments, which is traditional open banking, is going to mean the kind of integration of data. That also means that in terms of having sure that the regulatory reporting, when people open up those types of products and services, are going to require that. So that's going to be a big, big component where it is going to be generated towards cloud platforms to be able to enable effective regulatory reporting, both in terms of consumer protection and in terms of prudential type regulations, which are going to come in. The second big component is really around ESG reporting and ESG disclosures. And ESG disclosures really requires multiple data points to be brought in between external data sources through rating vendors, United Nations, etc., and a number of variety of data components, and also internal data in terms of governance to be linked together to make sure that's going to happen. The only way to facilitate that in terms of disclosure will be through a cloud platform, because you're trying to integrate multiple data sources in the right way with huge computing power and actually making sure that's viable going forward.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. And coming back to you, Christina, with so much, as it were, to do, what practical approaches can firms consider as they plan to implement reporting in the cloud? What are the steps they must take?
Yeah, I think, there are multiple things to consider if you want to move to the cloud. I think, first of all, because this data collection piece that we mentioned, I think on the one hand side, it's the advantage, the usage of the data, but somebody needs to do the work, right? So you need to bring the data in. And I think to really have the benefit, it makes sense to also embed the regulatory reporting use case into your whole cloud data strategy. So having the benefit of using data that already has been brought into the cloud. So either from external sources, like we just heard from Neeraj, the ESG data, or internal data that you also use for other type of reportings or evaluations. That is, of course, helpful because you do the work once and you can reuse it then for multiple use cases. So really aligning what are the data types that you want to bring to the cloud, what are the use cases there, putting it into the overall strategy, this gives you the leverage factor and the benefit of reusing data. I think that's the one thing, and I think that's the main point to consider from my perspective. And because this really is also the internal resources of your team, right? So it's an collaboration of different teams that have to work together there. The other point I would mention is, I think, the connectivity with data providers or solution providers. I think what we now see is that data providers really offer this API functionality that Neeraj has said, this online access to information. And I think that's also very important, because regulators require reports more often, more frequently, more up to date, and having the data fast, accessible is also very important. So instead of reusing the old traditional way of receiving data by file transfer, downloading and things like that, I think it's very important to also look what kind of new technology can I use for the connectivity, for getting data, using the possibilities of the cloud and the technical interfaces is something that I think is important to consider. And then, of course, the whole setup. I think it's very important not to move things one-to-one. You really want to gain the benefit of the new platform. So therefore, you have to think, what is the benefit of the platform and how can I use it best? So I think there are multiple ways of collaboration with RegTech providers. One is really, for example, you can say, okay, you shift your raw data to the cloud and the calculation is done elsewhere. You get the results back and you can use the reporting. So there are modern collaboration methods or possibilities now, and I think it's worth having a look, especially if you have to grow fast or create a report fast. It's maybe good to really consider outsourcing and collaboration via cloud environment as a good opportunity or good way moving forward. But on the other hand, of course, you have all the topics that you have in general, not only for regulatory reporting, but also for other type of data usage in the cloud. This is the question of data security, data access, and all of that. I think that's also important, and you have to consider it in your planning.
Excellent. Thank you. Harpreet, what would you add there in terms of practical considerations?
Completely agree with what Christina said there, and very comprehensive answer as well. I'll just add another angle. So many times when we are talking to our clients, the business case that they create is reactive. You know, a system is end of life, a new regulation is coming, or 1 or 2, and let's move that to cloud. What that leads to typically is that then the budget you get is for those regulations only, or just to migrate that system, which Christina was touching upon, 1-to-1. And they end up not actually benefiting from all the use cases of clouds. So I would suggest, as a practical approach, do spend time thinking about a proactive business case, because the benefits are wider than just regulation. And just touching upon that data quality, you know, so it's garbage in, garbage out, but at the same time, spending time on your data and see how cloud can help you actually improve data and the control framework around that. So those are a couple of other things I think we should consider.
Okay, these are all very large things, as your data quality, infrastructure, and so on. Okay, lovely. Christina, coming back to you, regulatory reporting regimes, are there some that are well suited to cloud, and looking at sort of the business case could provide quick wins for people who are trying to go this way?
Yes, I think we thanks for the question. I think we are touching some of the points already. I think one is really all these reportings where you feel that you could better collaborate with RegTech or data providers are these cases that I would look first. But also, I think we said that the benefit of putting things to the cloud is that you can better cope with a huge volume of data. So I think the regulatory reportings that benefit most from a cloud solution are those ones where you need tons of data and really have to collect data from different sources. So I think of the Basel and MiFID type of reporting style, where you really have these different type of data from each and everywhere and things like that. But on the other hand, having these reports with huge volumes of data, I think there is no quick win, because I think Harpreet mentioned it very well. You need to bring the data there. You have to do the data cleansing, the data quality, and things like that. But I think really the benefit of cloud is really for huge volume data where you have a lot of underlying information that you have to bring together. I think these type of reportings would be in our scope for having this on the cloud. I think when you have isolated solutions for very specific solutions for specific regulatory requirements, that is already there, it's working, that's fine. But everything that's also changing when we know that there are new versions coming and things like that, I think that would be the ones that I would put in there. I think also Niresh mentioned ESG, where you have the strong collaboration with data providers, the strong processing. I think this is the one. With regard to quick wins, I'm not quite sure if there are really quick wins. I think it really depends. Maybe in some cases, if you can reuse some things that you have already done, I would say so, but maybe my co-speakers have some ideas about quick wins.
Okay, well, let's see. Coming to you, Nesh, you might want to add a quick win here, but talking about what regulatory data should and should not be put in the cloud and why. And I think this has changed considerably over the last few years, where you only put a little bit in the cloud that nobody cared about, and now you put a lot in the cloud that you might care about, and so on. How's this looking? And do you see any ways of making a quick win in the move to cloud to sort of demonstrate capability?
Sure. I think, Sarah, I think that the key thing here is around actually making sure that the data security and data protection activities are in place. And so when the question is, what regulatory data should and should not be, obviously we all think about customer data and customer data being secure, and that's fundamental. What we've seen over the last X amount of years is obviously whether data is in a data center or the cloud, as long as there are effective security in place, data security in place, and there's effective ability to combat cyber crime and cyber interventions, that then means that the kind of effective viewpoints around cloud is absolutely acceptable. I think there are two things to add. Is one, obviously, the permissions in terms of jurisdictions and specific legal entity permissions around specific parts of data and where they need to be shared and where they need to be hosted in the cloud. There are some regulatory implications around that in terms of where the cloud data center is held and what that needs to happen. That's the key thing in terms of actually making sure what one should do, could not do. I think broader than that, I think kind of touching on really the kind of efficiencies, I think there are three things about thinking about putting regulatory data in the cloud and using that as the best way of doing that. Some of my fellow panelists have mentioned that, just to kind of ram it home, and there are three key things to consider when you're actually looking at this major investment in terms of moving regulatory data and data in a whole to the cloud. The first is, what is the common data model to create? So in my last kind of X amount of years of experience and working with a number of clients, we have regulatory reporting obligations for MiFID or Dodd-Frank or Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act and KYC and a variety, LIBOR, etc., multiple ones. You really boil that down to what type of data elements are actually required to service the multitude of regulatory reporting obligations. And you will really get to a point, if you did a real clear view in terms of common data model and data elements, 80% of the data that you actually can service, predominantly most of the regulatory reporting obligations that you have. And you're using the same 80% of critical data elements over and over again. So item one is really focus on actually getting that focus on the common data model to be able to effectively create the reporting solution before you migrate to the cloud. The second was really mentioned by Harpreet, which I totally agree, which is around data quality. What we found quite time and time again is organizations are migrating data lock, stock, and barrel to the cloud without cleansing the data and focusing on the right level of data. Huge wasted effort. And so that really has to be the second component. Take the data, good quality data into the cloud that you're going to reuse and focus on, and do the cleansing before you migrate it into the cloud, not afterwards. The third real component is actually around ecosystem partnerships and how you're going to leverage not only regulatory technology, but also really the clever data technologies which exist to be able to really power data in the future. I won't mention names of these type of vendors, but I think most of us know them quite well. Leverage that as an ecosystem strategy, so you're able to leverage that data for making maximum efficiency out of data. So that I think those are the three pieces of advice I'd give in that basis.
Okay, so not a question of which you should and which you shouldn't, but how you do it more than anything. Okay. And would you add to that, Harpreet?
Yeah, I actually, again, very comprehensive answer, and I agree with what Niresh said. The data that you put, regulatory data that you put in cloud is driven by the data security framework that has been set up in your organization. If it has not been set up, there is an issue that needs to be fixed. And then that could be looked at multiple levels, right? So you can actually get into detail and say, there are regimes which are not very cloud friendly, although there has been shift in the industry. Many major countries are moving to more risk-based type of approach anyways. So that's one level. Then you look at the regulations within regime. Obviously, if we're talking about EU, GDPR come into play immediately. And so the data which is related to GDPR, you have to look at a little bit more carefully than other data. And then the actual underlying infrastructure. And it's again become very standard to ask these questions on where your cloud servers are, where your DR sites are, et cetera, et cetera. So we can actually very quickly not really come up with a comprehensive list, but come up with a framework which can help you sort this out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's pause for a moment and take a second audience poll. The question this time, what are the challenges of moving regulatory reporting to cloud at your organization? And here you can tick as many of the boxes as you like. You can tick all of them if you need to. And while you do that and answer the question, let me come back to Christina to tell us about the challenges of moving regulatory reporting to cloud in her experience.
Yeah, I think, of course, many points were mentioned by Niresh already. So I think you really need to think thoroughly what you do with the data that you have on-prem and how you move it to the cloud. And of course, the other systems will not disappear. So you still have the other databases there. And I think that's really the challenge, how you keep the data in sync. What are you doing where? How do you put the data in? And I really strongly support what Niresh was saying about the data cleansing. So just putting garbage data on the cloud makes it worse, because then you have a big data lake, which I hear it can be then a data swarm, which you don't want to have at the end. So it's really the challenge of moving data there, really see what happens with your legacy system, what happens to your on-prem system. I think that's one of the challenges. And I think the underlying data problems or issues that you have right now will not disappear by just moving things to the cloud. So you still need to look into the data quality topic. Of course, then you have the data access topic, which you have to solve, the data security topic, which you have to solve so that you really are sure that you have the right data in place. And data security is internally, of course, data access and who can seize what, but also externally to have any ransomware or cyber attacks or everything like that to under control. But I think then also, in addition, you have the new challenges that were also mentioned, like building the data warehouse, thinking of a proper data model, how you want to build it in future. And that's also not the current state, but we all know that future use cases will come. So you need to also foresee a little bit how you want to grow. So the data model, the data warehouse that you build is not just for today, but it should also grow over time. So these type of things need to be also considered. So it needs a lot of conceptual work. It needs a lot of collaboration between different teams. And I think these are the challenges when bringing the topics together.
Okay, Niresh, what would you say there in terms of regulatory challenges on the journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of it we've covered across Harpreet and Christina already, but I think there are two big challenges. One is really working out in terms of which regulatory regime, in terms of legal entity positioning, and regulatory regime in terms of the regulators' permissions to be able to share data across different boundaries. And that can be quite complicated when there are multiple legal entities for an organization, and you're trying to integrate a presenter view. And we know that there are some severe data sharing issues in terms of certain countries across the globe, which makes that position. So that's one. The second is really about thinking through the right to left, which is the right to left view in terms of the regulatory report, then in terms of the regulatory model, the regulatory data, and then the regulatory requirements and the regulations, and really working that through and making sure that's done in the right way. Because we have seen implementation issues in terms of turning from left to right for regulatory reporting regimes when there be migrations to cloud. So that's the second thing just to be really, really mindful about, is actually listing all the regulatory reporting regimes, thinking about where they need to be reported, then working its way through and making sure the right data elements and the data models are selected. And sadly, that still goes wrong. The third
carry on.
Sorry, the third just trying to finish on that is really now thinking about the actual broader components, because when organizations are moving to the cloud, they're not moving just for regulatory reporting purposes. They're moving for monitoring purposes. And there have been delays where regulatory reporting submissions have been missed because of movement to the cloud, because of other broad amounts of data components being moved to the cloud, which delayed it. So again, making sure there's a prioritization of regulatory reporting, and there's a contingency just in case the cloud migration doesn't work for regulatory purposes.
Okay, thank you. The great resilience. Okay, let's see those poll results, if we may. And Naresh, would you like to comment on these ones?
Thank you. I think some of it is a surprise, but in terms of what we're seeing as the challenges, so legacy systems or data silos, absolutely, I think is at 60%. I think that's clear. Data security, we've looked at lack of required skills. I don't think any of us actually mentioned that, but that's absolutely quite right, and great that the audience has identified that. So I totally agree. I think the one bit I would say quite surprised about, maybe lower in terms of actually the viewpoint, is compliance, is actually meeting compliance requirements for regulatory reporting. I would have expected that to be maybe higher in terms of the challenge, but apart from that, it's great to see that. It's a really good reflective answer from the audience.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed for voting, and thank you for your comments, Naresh. Let's take a quick break for a few audience questions, and let's start here. It's a planning question. So can I come back to you on this one, Christina? It says, we are planning to move reg reporting into the cloud, but don't have a lot of resource, so we'll need to move quite slowly. Where should we start so that we can show early benefits?
Yeah, that's a good one, but I think that's also one that everyone is facing with the resources, having not sufficient resources and want to show quick results. And I think this is really the challenge, because you need to build the foundation with the data first, and this doesn't show quick results there. I think what I definitely would start with is checking what data do you have already in the cloud. If there's already something around, I think that would be then a good starting point. What kind of regulatory reporting can be based on that? I think that's one of the topics that we are also looking at. But in other cases, we also start to really go use case based, so really try to define a use case where we feel that we can make proper progress. So what we, for example, did is really we list all the use cases that we have and start to evaluate that. So giving it, what's the effort of doing that, what is already there, what is the risk, and things like that. And by having then a list of use cases and a proper rating, you can then see what makes most sense, where to start, with which regulatory reporting you could start. I think what we in general do is we try to piggyback on existing projects a little bit and see whether we can also leverage that for regulatory reporting. So for example, we started with our ESG initiative and bring the ESG data in the cloud just for internal purpose, but then of course also using that for the ESG reporting, which is then upcoming and done. So I think it's really looking, can you leverage existing things that are ongoing? And I would start with that. But the challenge is really, and I can see that, getting the foundation right. And we mentioned all the topics with the data aggregation, the data cleansing, the access concept, and there it's hard to show benefits. So I would really start rather with the evaluation of use cases with regard to the data sourcing, with regard to the development that is needed there, and having then a list and prioritize that. I think that makes most sense for me.
Okay, thank you. And Harpreet, one for you here. And it says, what does the panel recommend in terms of private or public cloud for regulatory reporting? If public cloud, are some better set up for this? Let's not name names, but tell us if some are better, why they are better.
So some are definitely more global than others. Mm-hmm. Having said that, really big clients have different preferences. So, like really well-established institutions have different preferences, and they go ahead with their preferences and are defined, right? So it's a journey. Moving to cloud is a journey. Your cloud vendor provider also improve with it. So the moving to and then there are quite a few clients which have combination of different clouds. So not just within reg space, but they have relationship. Just picking up an example on liquidity management, maybe they're using a particular cloud, but for reg tech solution, they've gone with a vendor who had preference on a different cloud. So I think of the top 3 or 4 that are out there, they're pretty similar from my perspective. Whatever works with your own cloud strategy and your regions, that sometimes becomes important if you are very if you have needs for very specific regions, etc. Then that should be okay.
Okay. Do you still see people using private cloud a lot, or are they very interested in moving to the public cloud?
I beg your pardon?
Do you still see people using private cloud a lot, or very much moving to public cloud?
A lot are moving to public cloud. So that has been a really fast growing market, has been for quite some time. Yes.
Okay, that's great. And I have one in here that I don't think has quite reached your screens yet, but I'll put it to Naresh and see what he says. It says, because it has reached your screen. Here it is. So we're on this panel here. What's the real cost of moving to the cloud, and what's the return? Does that work out? I mean, obviously we can't say the cost, but where are the returns?
That's the one point, isn't it, Sarah? So I think in terms of costs, look, no one, I mean, that's going to be very specific to each organization, because it has 2 different or 3 different components, right? Just being really good. One is technology debt. So legacy platforms and legacy infrastructure and what that looks like, data debt, and then the actual cloud you're moving to, what type of performance and service you're trying to look at from the various vendors which are available. So there are a multitude of elements that are going to be ingrained in terms of working out the cost, and that's not a single answer. In terms of benefits, I think there are a couple of things to mention. We are in the age of cloud and digital. So, everybody's going to move to the cloud and digital. Everybody is moving. So it is not one that you have organizations have a choice in. If you want to be an organizations where you're dealing with multiple customers, dealing with multiple ecosystem partners and suppliers, and you want to be able to actually deliver service as well to both your clients, customers, and the regulators. So I don't think you can avoid it. In terms of benefits, I think the key thing is really taking this an opportunity to actually become a more digitally enabled, digitally enhanced organization. And that is what cloud allows you to do, because the movement into cloud means that the channel strategy and the data strategy is enhanced straight away. And through interactions, through linkages with APIs and microservices, you're able to integrate multiple third parties into your ecosystem really well in regard to the cloud platform. That is the huge benefit that you're going to have in terms of working out through. The second component is using that as the mechanism to be able to clear up and clean up your data model and your data quality, means that the operational cost and the implications of remediations, fines, customer complaints are going to be mitigated. Those are the key things I can really think of in terms of the real value in terms of moving to cloud.
Okay. Anybody like to add any more to those questions? Are you happy? Okay, let's move on back to my questions, and back to you, Naresh, if I may. What types of drug tech solutions and services can help here? Obviously, nobody wants to build this stuff anymore.
Absolutely, Sarah. So we've been working with a number of organizations in financial services, and the key thing I would say is building a reg tech ecosystem strategy. What do I mean by that? Is there are specific reg techs which are now fundamentally cloud enabled and enhanced to be able to actually provide a set of services. We obviously have the classic regulatory reporting platforms that everybody knows, the 4 or 5 to 10 vendors who are excellent at providing reg reporting end-to-end for multiple regulatory regimes. We're about aware of that. And that's obviously taking advantage of that. But there are others. So the way that we're working with our clients at the moment is actually helping them with their reg tech ecosystem, reg tech strategy, to say, this is what you need for horizon scanning, this is what you need for a common data model, this is what you need to do in terms of reg reporting, this is what you need in terms of regulatory applicability and reg mapping and rule mapping, and then the broader viewpoint. And the real clarity here, the firms which have been very successful have been very precise in actually saying we need a reg tech ecosystem and a reg tech strategy about the 5 to 7 vendors we're going to bring and plug and play to integrate to get to a better outcome for not only reg reporting, reg change, reg horizon scanning, because the reg reporting obviously is the end game in terms of disclosures and reporting. All of the things needs to happen before to be able to do that. And that's where we're seeing clients really take advantage of that, is to build that reg tech ecosystem. And one thing I always say in terms of reg tech is, please, please, please don't be bamboozled by the whizzy dashboards and the whizzy presentations you get at the demos. 12 years in financial services, both in terms of my 2 previous organizations, that's something used to happen quite a lot. And what I would say is really be thoughtful in terms of which reg tech you're bringing in for which use case. Be issue focused, not solution focused in terms of those reg techs, and really try to bring leverage from them when you do that.
Okay, thank you. And Harpreet, what would you say there? Obviously, your experience is great in this department. What's really needed here in terms of reg tech solutions?
Again, completely agree with Niresh, but I'll add maybe even go further once you have built the reg tech ecosystem. And again, there is a lot of effort in building a reg tech ecosystem. But once you have that done, why not actually start looking at, if you're getting reference data from upstream systems, go for data as a service type of model, see how it can be part of your ecosystem, or your reg tech can be part of wider. Similarly, trade as a service, where you're getting these transactions from other systems. So but for this to be successful, because now we're making a little bit loosely coupled as well, because it's becoming an ecosystem, you need to have a very strong control and governance framework around it. This is and keep focusing on that from the day one, right? So certainly what you have in your organization is a very powerful group of systems which are working together using the same common data model that Niresh was talking about, and resulting in the type of regulations with percentage of accuracy that is required, maybe surpassing what regulators need, but also being able to use that data for many other activities. So that is a very powerful solution, a very powerful ecosystem.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. And I think we have time for a final audience poll. And the question this time, it's what we've just been talking about, really. What are the benefits or potential benefits of migrating regulatory reporting to cloud at your organization? So again, you can tick as many of the boxes as you like. And while you do that, let me come to Niresh to talk about the opportunities of migrating to cloud and the penalties of not doing so. Let's keep it away from the business benefits that we've talked about, but to the things which are key to regulatory reporting.
I think we've answered this, Sarah, in multiple ways. If I'm honest, I think just creating that real clarity of a cloud strategy of what we're linked to regular reporting is important, and really thinking about the technology debt and the data debt, and making sure that migration is managed effectively and the integration is done properly. That's all I would re-emphasize from some of the previous answers I've made. Okay, fine. Christina, what would you add there?
Yeah, I agree with Naresh. I think many points we have mentioned, the scalability, the better flexibility, the collaboration with third parties. I think it's maybe the question, the second part about the penalties, why shall you do? If you're happy with your on-prem solution, why shall you move to the cloud? I think that's the question. And I think if we look at the regulatory setup or the regulations that are in the market and how regulators work and plan to work in future, I think they really ask for more transparency. They ask for faster access. And I think you will come to the limits with on-prem solutions for the long run. I think the solution providers, the regulators, they all look at the faster data exchange, and this will be done online. This will be done in online solutions, and not being there and always having the burden to bring things to the cloud or to bring things online to exchange information. I think in the long run, this will not work for companies anymore. And I think that's the point, that you need to also start to prepare yourself for the new world, for the new setup going forward. And once you are so far behind, it will be difficult to catch up. I think that's the one point. What we also see, and I think again, the mentioned example of ESG, the volume of data. I think in the past, we were really looking at small volume of data, not much transparency, not this granularity. This is really increasing a lot. And we see it also now at Vontobel with our online on-prem databases, the server volumes, this also generates cost, and the volume of data is increasing. So I think you need to look into that. And I think with cloud, you have something which is scalable, which just can scale up and scale down depending on the needs. That's very important. And the third point that I would like to mention here is, I think we also mentioned the legacy systems, the variety of platforms. I think you cannot maintain for each and every solution a single application. You need to have a common platform which allows you to leverage things, and not doing so, the operational effort in managing all different kind of local applications is not feasible in future.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. And if we may, let's see the poll results, please. And Christina, perhaps you'd like to comment on these. That's something that we haven't mentioned very much, accuracy. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think in general, I think we said bringing the data together and using modern technologies for data quality controls and things like that. I think that's maybe what's coming from. I think, yes, the opportunities of data analysis and also using AI functionality for data cleansing is much better in the cloud. I really think the flexibility and scale, I think this is the obvious thing. I think we also spoke about that. And the reporting costs, I think Naresh has also spoken on that. I think that's the point. Yes, with the platform, you can leverage things, you save cost, you don't have the on-prem cost and things like that. So I think it really reflects what we also discussed before. So that's it, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you indeed for voting. And let's move on and take a look at an emerging concept. Harpreet, please, would you explain cloud-based regulatory reporting as a service and its potential and how that might work?
Yeah, it's my favorite topic. So I've always seen this more as a journey with some stopovers now. And then based on companies or firms' current state of cloud adoption, you may want to take some of those stopovers or not, right? So the prerequisites, you need to understand what your firm's cloud strategy is, the regimes, the regulators' comfort within those regimes, the scope of moving or migrating to reg reporting as a service. So if you take care of some of those high-level prerequisites, then you choose the stopover. And I say choose; it's not a choice; it is a decision based on inputs. It could be simply just migrating to cloud infrastructure as a service. Could be more advanced in terms of platform as a service or software as a service. And I think typically when people are talking about reg reporting as a service, they're talking about taking the software as well as business processes and migrating them in an as a service model. But again, that could be a good end goal. But if you're starting with something as software as a service or platform as a service, it's a really good starting point. So that is what I would say. Now, potential. This is where I think it is very exciting, because once you have done this, and we've touched upon this when we were talking about a previous question with Naresh, you can now look at this vertically and say, okay, what else can we bring in this RegTech ecosystem, right? So and then let's start leveraging the inherent benefits that cloud gives you in terms of the technologies which come with it, as well as ability to look at your operating model and make it more resilient, because now things are in cloud, right? So that's vertically you can look at it, but you can also look at it horizontally. Now there's a reg reporting as a service solution, which hopefully is used by multiple players in the industry, or similar solution. Now you can start to harmonizing rules, agreeing on exception management, how certain type of breaks would be matched, UTI matching with your counterparts and whatnot. So potential is huge in terms of where this can finally lead to, right? And so that is why this is my favorite topic.
Very good, great potential. Neeraj, what would you say there? Is that something you are seeing in the market that people are starting to talk about, and
Sure.
the potential?
Sure. Sarah, as a moderator, you must be thinking all these panelists keep agreeing with each other and saying how great everything answer it. So I'm going to, with greatest respect to Harpreet, disagree with what he has said. So first, and I think it's a personal point of view. So because I think, having spent a number of years with real responsibility for regulatory change and data, to financial service organizations, I think there is a hesitancy in terms of actually discharging those obligations and moving that to some of those obligations and trusting a third party to do that end to end. So I think, although that there is a potential there in terms of what Harpreet mentioned, I think in terms of the take up of a firm, a financial services regulated firm, is actually providing all of those, or taking all of those regulatory obligations or reporting and saying, look, company X, provide us as a service end to end. I think it will take a long time for that to embed, because there are multiple risks involved with that in terms of actually doing that. So I think regulation, regulatory support, certain modules, certain platforms, and reg techs supporting that ecosystem and supporting a regulated firm absolutely will exist. But I think regulatory reporting as a service, where that's outsourced effectively end to end, I think may take a lot more time for that to embed itself.
Okay. Harpreet, do we have time to get there?
Sorry, I think it is happening already in the industry. But the way people are doing this is take a couple of regulations and say, okay, what if we migrate these two? And this is actually not just the software part of it, the BPaaS part of it. So I think it is happening. There's another flavor of this, which is a little bit different from reporting as a service, because there are now more focus on making sure you are independently able to verify what you're sending to regulators. That independent verification is being completely migrated. A little bit different, but you can see it's a step in the right direction. So that those things are already sort of happening. But I do agree with Naresh that it's not going to happen overnight. There is a comfort zone. The question of comfort is a question of confidence within the cloud. And within cloud, when we're talking about regulatory, people become very, very nervous, but the journey has started.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And finally, I'd like to ask all our experts for some advice they'd like to share with the practitioners considering or working on the migration of their regulatory response to cloud. Harpreet, perhaps you'd like to start.
So I'll start with 3 Ds, maybe. Define your business case really well at the, or spend time defining your business case. Data is key. I think everybody spoke about it. So make sure you have right kind of data frameworks or data governance framework. And another one which I had touched upon is design your solution well. Don't put into cloud because, oh, I have this regulation end of life and let's do it. You need to create in such a way that you're able to benefit from the cloud in a scalable way.
Thank you. Christina, what advice would you share?
Yeah, I think it's really the leveraging which is important. So the regulatory reporting in the cloud shall be embedded in the long-term IT strategy. Only by doing so you get the leveraging effect. So the using the data warehouse that has been built for other purposes or that is around is really something. I think it's not a standalone moving the reg tech or the reg reporting to the cloud. It's really an IT strategy, and I think you need to have well alignment with the respective teams there that this is the right way of doing so, because then later on also the operations is depending on that. I think then the other thing is really rethink the model, how you want to do regulatory reporting. I think we spoke about this outsourced solution and things like that. So rethink the collaboration that you have with solution providers, using the new possibilities that are there, getting comfortable with the new setup really, and look what makes more sense, what is really the benefit of moving to the cloud. And I think with the third part, I would really agree with what Harpreet was saying, I think it really needs a proper design. So it's really a proper assessment of what are the requirements for the regulatory reporting, conceptually plan it through, and then start with the migration.
Okay, thank you. And there are some final words from you.
Perfect. So I think I'm not going to have a triple D, unfortunately. So Harpreet's going to one. But I'm going to give 5 pieces of clear advice and just summarize what I've been thinking through or articulating. I think the first one is start right to left, regulatory reporting, let into then what's the model and what's the actual data elements, what's the regulation. So get the lineage right and start right to left. The second component is really around the common data model. Because there's a great opportunity to get a common data model that services multiple regulatory reporting regimes and using the right data in a really clear way. Third item is really coming back to actual and data quality, cleanse the data before migration into the cloud, and make sure that the right data is going in. The fourth is around ecosystem, so leverage the ecosystem strategy in terms of which RegTech, which data providers can really help bring that together. And the final one is have a plan B, contingency, because if you've got a date for regulatory reporting submissions and you're actually pinning everything on the cloud, as I said before, there'll be multiple items that are going into the cloud. You need to make sure there's a clear plan and a plan B, just in case on day one that fails, and you don't want to be missing your regulatory reporting obligations to the regulator.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much indeed. And thank you to all our speakers for sharing their expertise and experience today. Thank you too to Luxoft for sponsoring today's webinar. It's a great conversation. Thank you. Before we close, just a few A-Team group items that may be of interest to you. If you scroll down your screen to additional options, you can sign up for our 14th of June webinar on leveraging NLP for regulatory compliance, and register to attend our 4th of October RegTech Summit in London. You can also download the latest edition of our regulatory handbook with plenty of material in there. That said, that's it for today. So thank you again to Christina, Niresh and Harpreet. And thank you to all of you who've taken part in the webinar. Please complete our feedback form as we're always keen to hear your views and improve our products. Meantime, thanks again and goodbye.